What if I told you that the moment an empath finally walks away, the toxic person doesn't just lose a relationship, they lose their entire life support system? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about psychological parasitism will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about toxic dynamics. Carl Jung said that certain relationships are not connections at all, but extractions. And nowhere is this more evident than when a toxic person realizes too late what they've lost. You see, toxic people think empaths are replaceable, but Jung's research revealed something far more devastating and, frankly, absolutely irreversible. Here's what toxic people don't understand until it's too late. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll see why walking away is the empath's ultimate power move. According to Carl Jung, toxic individuals operate from what he called the unconscious shadow. They project their darkness onto others and feed off emotional energy to avoid facing themselves. But here's what makes empaths uniquely valuable to them. Empaths don't just tolerate this darkness, they try to heal it, transform it, love it away. And this creates a dynamic that Jung identified as psychologically addictive. Listen carefully to what happens in these relationships. Carl Jung discovered that toxic people become dependent on what he termed emotional alchemy. The empath takes their poison and somehow turns it into patience, takes their cruelty and responds with compassion, takes their chaos and offers stability. The toxic person doesn't have to do any internal work because the empath is doing it for them. They get to stay broken while feeling supported. They get to be destructive while being forgiven. They get to hurt others while being loved anyway. This is what Jung called parasitic symbiosis. And when it ends, the toxic person doesn't just lose a person, they lose their entire psychological infrastructure. But here's where it gets absolutely devastating for the toxic individual. According to Carl Jung's theory of projection, toxic people don't actually see the empath as they truly are. They see them as an extension of themselves, a tool, a resource to be consumed. So when the empath walks away, the toxic person experiences what Jung called ego death, not because they loved the empath, but because they've lost their mirror, their emotional supply, their validation source, their free therapist, their punching bag, and their redemption story all at once. And here's what they'll never admit, even to themselves. Carl Jung observed that toxic individuals rarely recognize value until it's gone. While the empath was present, they were taken for granted, criticized, diminished, manipulated. But the moment that presence disappears, that's when the toxic person realizes what Jung termed the irreplaceable loss. Here's what they lose first, and it's more than they can possibly comprehend. According to Carl Jung, empaths provide what he called unconditional positive regard, a level of acceptance so rare that most people never experience it once in their lifetime. The toxic person was being loved at their worst. They were being seen at their ugliest and still being chosen. They were showing their darkness and finding someone who didn't run. This kind of love, Jung discovered, is not just rare. It's once in a lifetime. And they threw it away. But the losses go far deeper than this. Listen to what happens next. Carl Jung discovered that empaths serve as what he called the psyche's mirror. They reflect back truth, potential, possibilities. In the empath's eyes, the toxic person could see not just who they were, but who they could become. The empath held space for their growth, believed in their transformation, saw light in them even when they showed only darkness. This reflection, Jung understood, is the foundation of all psychological development. When the empath leaves, that mirror shatters, and the toxic person is left alone with only their own distorted self-perception. Here's where the psychology becomes absolutely fascinating. According to Carl Jung's research on the shadow self, toxic people avoid their internal darkness by externalizing it. They need someone to blame, someone to project onto, someone to make feel small so they can feel big. The empath was perfect for this because they absorbed it all without retaliating. But here's what the toxic person doesn't realize until too late. Jung discovered that this dynamic was the only thing preventing them from having to face themselves. Now that the empath is gone, there's no one left to blame, no one to project onto, no one to distract them from their own emptiness. They're forced into what Jung called the dark night of the soul, alone with the very demons they've been running from. And it's absolutely terrifying for them. But wait, because the losses compound in ways they never expected. Carl Jung said that empaths provide what he termed existential grounding. They bring stability to chaos, peace to storms, meaning to confusion. The toxic person's life felt manageable because the empath was managing it emotionally. They were the one remembering birthdays, initiating difficult conversations, holding the relationship together, forgiving the unforgivable, staying when any sane person would leave. The toxic person got to be reckless because someone was being responsible, got to be cold because someone was being warm, got to take because someone was giving endlessly. When the empath walks away, the toxic person loses their entire emotional infrastructure. And Jung discovered they rarely survive this loss with grace. Here's what happens in the aftermath, and it's exactly what Jung predicted. According to Carl Jung, toxic individuals go through what he called the cycle of belatedness. First comes denial. They convince themselves the empath will return, that they always do. Then comes rage. How dare the empath abandon them? Don't they know how much they're needed? Then comes manipulation. The love bombing, the false promises, the crocodile tears, the sudden transformation act. But here's what Jung understood. None of this is real change. It's panic. It's the terror of losing their supply source. And when none of it works, when the empath stays gone, that's when the toxic person experiences what Jung called the void. The crushing realization of what they've lost forever. Carl Jung discovered that certain losses cannot be recovered from because they're not just about losing a person. They're about losing the version of yourself that person believed in. The empath saw potential in the toxic person that no one else saw, gave chances no one else would give, loved parts of them no one else could love. And now that vision is gone. That belief is withdrawn, that love is redirected elsewhere. The toxic person is left with only the cold, hard truth of who they actually are, without someone making excuses for them. This is what Jung called the collapse of the false self, and it's absolutely irreversible. But here's the most devastating loss of all, and it's the one they'll feel for the rest of their lives. According to Carl Jung, empaths don't just love, they transform. Their presence in someone's life is an invitation to evolution, to healing, to becoming whole. The toxic person had a guide standing right beside them, offering to walk through the darkness together. They had someone willing to witness their transformation, support their growth, celebrate their healing. They had what Jung called a psychological ally, someone rare enough to see their wounds and loving enough to help them heal. And they weaponized that love. They punished that compassion. They betrayed that trust, not once but repeatedly, until the empath had no choice but to choose themselves. Here's what Carl Jung wanted toxic people to understand, but knew most never would. When an empath walks away, they're not just ending a relationship, they're closing a door that will never open again, not because empaths hold grudges, but because Jung discovered they eventually reach what he called the point of completion. They've learned the lesson, integrated the experience, honored the connection for what it was, and now they're done. Not angry, not bitter, just finished. And this finality, Jung observed, is the most permanent thing in human psychology. The toxic person will meet other people. They'll find new supply, they'll repeat their patterns. But they'll never find another empath willing to love them through their darkness. Because word spreads in the energetic realm, and empaths, Jung discovered, eventually learn to recognize red flags they once ignored. This is what toxic people lose when an empath walks away. Everything. Not because the empath was everything, but because they were the only one willing to see the toxic person as anything more than their worst behaviors. And according to Carl Jung's lifetime of research, That kind of loss doesn't just hurt, it haunts forever.